Hey guys, this is Patrick Hall with Fstoppers.com. I'm here with Mike Kelley, and today we're going to talk about how you can take control and monetize your photos and videos when they go viral. So just anyone that doesn't know anything about us that's watching this, you've had a lot of viral projects. I've had kind of more viral videos. I can say I had a shoot where I did a taser photo shoot, and that went massively viral. I think it has 6 million views on YouTube. It got me on CNN, Comedy Central, ABC's The Doctors, on every news publication around the world. And then I had another one recently where I did a series of people in Charleston that got guns for Christmas. And I just took portraits of people the day after Christmas with the toys that they got. And that got me on Fox News and a handful of other things. You've had some pretty big projects as well. What was the first really viral project that you had? The
first one that I ever did that went really viral was my Pan Am photo shoot. And I met a guy who was painstakingly restoring the interior of a Pan Am 747. And we hired like 20 models and we dressed them all in, period attire. And we did a photo shoot that kind of brought back to life the golden age of flying, as people might call it. And that was kind of my first experience with things going viral. I didn't really know what I was doing.
When you say viral, what was the indicator that let you know that this is taking off? Were you just getting bombarded with emails? Are you on Twitter? Like, what were the things that were happening?
Yeah. I mean, you're getting emails constantly from news agencies, and and that one was interesting because it was kind of like a joint venture between me and the owner of that plane. And a lot of people wanted to talk to me, a lot of people wanted to talk to him, so we kind of came at it together. And for him, it wasn't really a monetary thing. For me, it was like, again, the first time I'd had a photo series go viral, so I didn't know exactly how to handle that. So it was a big learning experience for me. But you'll start getting a lot of emails from news agencies, from local magazines that want to feature stories on this, and they're asking, how can people come check this out, and what was the experience like photographing that? So that one was really a big learning experience.
Did you know to charge for anything at that point, or were you?
Yeah, well,
because you charge in your commercial work, so you know what is going on in that side.
And that one was pretty touch and go, because for me I don't think that was ever going to be a really big moneymaker. And now a couple years later, I've kind of gotten good at extracting money from that. But at the time, that was, again, I kind of dipped my toe in. I wasn't quite ready for it, but it was a big learning experience for me.
Could you tell people out there watching, do you know how much money on that personal project? How much did it cost to do, and then how much do you think you've made?
Yeah, so the owner of the aircraft, his name is Anthony, I split the cost with him. I think we spent maybe like $7,000 or $8,000 together total on the wardrobing and the style and the food, and we literally had one of those scissors trucks come from the airport when they recreated the Pan Am menu from the 70s right down to a T. And I can't point to a number and say I made $14,000 from that, but I do know that it got me a lot of SEO. It was in every airline blog, it was in every airport blog, and sort of a lot of style blogs picked it up too, and it was like relive the golden age of flight.
Do you know for certain it paid for the shoot? Did you guys make $8,000? Like, it was worth doing?
It was absolutely worth doing, and again, that was my first sort of toe in the water with personal projects, and it did. I think it was worth having. It's great in my portfolio, and now years later, I've probably made that money back, whether it's through commissions or licensing the images to various parties. But I haven't been able to really keep good tabs on that one because, again, that was my first project, and it was coming at me so fast. Like, what do I do? But
what was the second project you did, and what did you learn from the first one that maybe you used to make the second one more viral, or to be more prepared for when those emails came in?
The second one was Wake Turbulence, which was my image of all the airplanes taking off at LAX, every aircraft movement over the course of an entire day.
I remember seeing Snoop Dogg tweeted that out.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg took that one. Yeah, that one went crazy viral and still is to this day, which is very interesting. That one, I didn't plan it, but I had experience from the Pan Am thing to kind of know how to manage my assets, manage the rights, manage the money from that. I put that one on Reddit, and the next day I woke up to at least 50, maybe 100 emails from all these news sources that wanted to post about it.
And that's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it was great. It's one of the.
You pulling your hair out?
Yeah, well, no, it was fun. I was getting no sleep. But I really learned about how to, I knew that I should be getting paid for these, again, after some of the experiences I'd had with the Pan Am project. And so essentially what happened was Reddit got it in front of everyone on the internet. And then if people really want to see it, they can go to Reddit and see it. But if a news article or something, or a news agency wants to write a story about it, and they're going to be making ad revenue from it. I had known enough at that point from my career in architecture and from licensing other images that I should be getting paid for this very viral image that was going to drive a lot of traffic to these websites. So at that point, I started sort of getting my hands dirty with managing my own rights and kind of coming up with a fee structure to manage that image. And that image also kind of got me down the road of selling my photo projects as fine art series as well. So that one was kind of a two-pronged approach. I got a lot of fine art print sales and a lot of licensing income from.
What's pretty interesting is most of the Fstoppers readers will know you as an architectural photographer, but everything you just mentioned has nothing to do really with architecture.
Right.
So there's obviously something going on with you choosing, I guess, these are personal projects that you're doing to try to make something viral, or just interesting ideas that you have that aren't related to architecture?
Well, I mean, I don't get me wrong, I absolutely love photographing architecture, but I need something on the side. I need to be creating something for myself constantly. And I'll often do personal projects that focus on architecture to, build that side of my business and expand my portfolio. But I really love sort of photographing infrastructure and the mechanized world, if you will. And it seems like those projects have done really well for me when it comes to going viral and expanding my name, not only in like the fine art world, but also in the architecture and industrial industries, not to mention all the wonderful SEO that you get when your work goes viral. So it's been a really good thing for me.
So let's talk a little bit, one, about why it's a good idea to have projects go viral, and then two, how are you making money off of these, and how much money are you making?
Of course, yeah. First of all, for me, it's very gratifying to see my little pet projects be seen by millions of people all over the world. I mean, articles have been translated into languages that I can't even begin to understand. They've been on every continent, and basically every capital city at some point has had a newspaper or something writing an article about my work, which is just fantastic. It feels great. It's humbling, and it expands my reach in ways that I never thought possible.
Have you now become the top Mike Kelley? You have a pretty common name, but
unfortunately, it seems like there are
you're rising in the ranks, though.
A lot of many famous Mike Kelleys. I think there's a screenwriter or a producer or something, and then there's a big time artist, and then there's a couple photographers named Mike Kelley as well.
But I'm sure with every one of these articles, you're getting the backlinks.
Exactly, and in my little niche, I think I'm on top, which is great. But it's really helped to grow my business. Again, I've had architecture clients hire me because they saw my airport images or they saw my aerial images, and they're like, oh, it's 7 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and they're relaxing after a long day on Reddit or something, and they see that work, and they go to my site like, oh, he photographs architecture too, maybe I'll hit him up. And I've had a lot of companies, I do a lot of this time dilation thing, if you will, and a lot of companies have hired me to sort of do my air portraits thing for an architectural subject or even a completely irrelevant subject as well. So it's kind of turned into this great secondary income stream for me. So it's been a really good endeavor just doing these personal projects that continue to go viral.
I think a lot of people probably, the number one question they have is how much money are we talking here? When a news agency wants to run your photo, or somebody wants to use it for a book cover, or they want to put it on television. I know some of my projects have made it to TV. You were just on national news recently too. What kind of money are we talking about here?
So the answer to that question is kind of like asking how long is a piece of string, and it really depends on so many things. It depends on the size of the publication who wants to buy the photo. It depends on the size of the piece of art that you're selling. It depends on if the image is being licensed for an advertising. And I've done everything from, like $80 for a one-time use in a local newspaper, all the way up to $15,000 or $20,000 for licensing by a multinational corporation. It really just depends. And in between, there's everything in between. I sell art prints that start around $650 and go up to $7,000 or $8,000, I think. And then there's bigger magazines and stuff, and you can get up to $1,000 or $2,000 for a cover or a 2-page spread. So the whole gamut right there is covered.
I know the few things that I've had go viral, there's always this debate. It's kind of the same debate photographers have starting in their career, whether or not they should do work for free. There's this balance of you can make a lot of money licensing something commercially, but then there's probably also situations where you're kind of happy to let some company use something for free, because in my case, I could then say I've been featured on a very well-known publication or TV show for the rest of my career, which at that one moment might be worth more than actually getting the paycheck.
Yeah, and I think that just sort of comes with experience. For example, there are some industries that just don't work the same as others. Like, for example, the art industry. I just did a gallery. I have a solo exhibition at the San Francisco airport, and if you think about the eyeballs on that, it's just millions and millions of people a year, right? But you can't license fine art images to an airport for them to display it in the gallery. That's not how it works. But then there's something like a travel agency might want to use one of my pictures, and they are actively making money off of that picture. So you really kind of have to use your judgment, and there are a lot of publications out there, they have like standard rates that they will pay for this sort of thing. There are a lot of websites out there that you can go to and actually see photographers anonymously submit what they've been paid for certain assignment or stock work, so you can kind of get a feel. But I see a lot of photographers, they'll be approached by, you name the big news outlet, whether it's a newspaper or a website or a big blog, and they'll say, oh, we don't really have a budget, but we want to put your photos on. And people's like, oh my God, the exposure. Well, I can tell you right now, the exposure from one of those things is not going to be career changing. And I think you should definitely, they have the budget for it. Every corporation's always going to come at you first, and they're going to say, we want to run your thing, we'll give you the photo credit. And everyone, if it's your first viral project, you'd be like, oh my God, millions of eyeballs. But you really have to think that they do have a budget for this. They should be paying you for it. They're making money off of it. They're advertising with it. They're driving traffic. You should be able to get something for it. And again, they do have a budget for it. So just asking is enough to get something.
And in many
usually.
cases, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but they will definitely pay you something, because that in and of itself is a legal contract to say, we have paid you.
Yes.
We paid you $25
Yes.
for that image.
Yeah.
But a lot of photographers might not be aware that that typically would have been a $200 image or
Right.
a $600 image
Right.
For that use. So,
And I think you really have to look at it, on a case-by-case basis. Is it an advertising usage? You definitely need to get paid. Is it an editorial usage? They usually have a budget for it. Is it the national news coming out to interview you, or you got flown to Dallas or something, right, to do some segment on ABC or NBC? And to me, that's kind of like, that's a real career builder for you. And again, that happened to me as well. And you can't charge ABC to interview or something. I don't think there's a precedent for that unless you're like a huge public figure with a speaking
well,
fee.
and sometimes with the news, it's like it's good for that day. I had
exactly.
a shoot. It was the Taser photo shoot, and I had a sketch that was done for the last week of David Letterman's Tonight Show, or Late Show.
Yeah.
And, that was one of those things where I was like, he's about to be off the air. Yes, do whatever you want so that I could say I was on the Late Show.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it got cut the first night, and then there was only 3 more nights he was on the air.
Yeah.
It never aired. But there's certain things I feel like in your career, you're happy to say, go for it.
Of course.
And then there's other things that you're like, especially if it happens the second time.
Yeah.
The second time they approach you, you say, well, I've already...
Yeah, and it's like the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th
now
times,
I want to get paid because
right.
it doesn't really help me
doesn't
to be
help
on...
me anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's break down the licensing very specifically so that people kind of have an idea. If a news agency contacts you, you get somebody in Europe or Russia, you get any of the major news outlets in America.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be like local newspapers, and some of them are going to be,
Of course.
CNN.
Yeah.
What are you charging in the ballpark for,
course.
An image or 2, 5 images for an article?
So there are a couple tools that I use to come up with figures for this. Basically, the licensing for editorial content is based on the circulation and the size of the content. And you can use a stock image price calculator like Getty, Corbis. They all have different calculators you can plug numbers into. And you can kind of poke around and find out the circulation for these bigger magazines or newspapers. Another great resource that I use is actually a blog. I think it's called What Photographers Are Paid or something. We'll put a link to that down here. But it's a spreadsheet where photographers have actually written in what basically every major news source has paid for assignment photography or stock photography. And you can kind of pull those numbers together and come up with your own fee structure. So at this point, I've done licensing for local newspapers from, say, $100 all the way up to big national magazines, international magazines like Time and Money, where they're doing 2-page spreads, and the fees are into the thousands of dollars.
Do you just flat out just tell them this is the fee when you do your research, or do you try to negotiate the budget out of them, or do you feel like these smaller publications, but these are kind of small fish compared to what we're about to talk to?
Yeah.
Do you just throw out a number and say, oh, this is for the Boston Globe, like it's going to be $150?
Well, and sometimes they come to me and they say, our editorial rate is X. And I think that if you're not really an established photographer, they're going to ask you for free. But if they go to your website and they say, like, oh, he's clearly doing assignment photography and stock photography and he's quite established, they're going to say, we pay $150 or $400 or $75 or whatever the number is. And it's really up to you to agree to that. And I have had good luck with negotiating. Like, they're always going to come at you with the perfect number for them. But if the picture is unique enough, you can oftentimes negotiate a little bit of a higher number. Like, you can't go on a micro stock site and find my pictures of airplanes taking off. It's just, they're so unique.
And that makes the value.
And that makes the value a little bit higher. And most sane news companies are more than happy to negotiate if they think the picture will add, it'll make them money. So
I know for me, I've gotten about $100 to $500 per image, and there's other times where I just try to give it maybe to Fstoppers or to the Petapixels or other websites that kind of feed the fire to get it going.
Right.
And my goal is that the companies that actually have $100 to $500 an article will find it in the first place.
Right.
Does that seem like a fair price for you? Have you gotten paid more than $500?
For web use, I don't believe so. I mean, for advertising use on the web, yes,
Sure.
but for editorial web use, I haven't. For editorial print use, absolutely. And you have to use common sense. There has to be some entry point for your pictures to be seen. You can't, I'm sure you can if you're a big enough photographer. You can just email whatever news outlet and say, I have this series, would you like to be the first to break it? The price is going to be this. Personally, I like to get some organic excitement going. I like Reddit. I obviously have a relationship with Fstoppers, with Petapixel. They posted my stuff in the past. But you have to start somewhere with showing the work. And again, I think if after a certain point you're confident enough in your work, you can just come out there and say, hey, would you like to break this? We've done this in the past. Here's what the price would be. So
if we now know that's kind of a good range of what people are paying for editorial work, I assume in this editorial world, there's also a benefit, like we said before, where you may not actually ask for money. How do you decide whether or not you want to charge a fee to run something editorially, or if you want them to do it anyway to potentially promote yourself?
Of course, and if they want to write an article about me and my backstory and my process, I'm not going to charge for that, because you're giving me a human interest story that I can share with my clients, that I can show around the world, that kind of thing. But if it's just kind of used to illustrate a story or illustrate a news piece, then that's what you should charge for. But if they're coming to you and they say, hey, we want to interview you and do a 3 or 4 page article about you and your background and your process, then that's not something that you're going to charge for.
In a lot of instances, you're doing these fine art kind of personal projects that really make no sense at all, except to focus back on you. Well, but there are other instances where you've taken pictures that are still kind of fine artsy, but they do have a news story component.
Even the fine art stuff, it can be used to illustrate a story. Like one great example that, of course, I would want to charge for is like a magazine doing a story about maybe how airfare to Europe is as low as it's ever been. They're going to use my image to illustrate that story. Now, I'm going to charge for that, but if they come to me and they say, we want to do a 2,000-word article about you and your history and your background with these images.
And you traveling to all the airports around the world. Right. They're going to...
That's something that directly benefits me. I'm not going to charge for that.
So if it promotes you, you might do something totally for free just to get the backlinks and the story and make people more aware of you as a photographer. If it's being used editorially to promote, travel around the world, you're going to charge for that.
To illustrate a story.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you've had situations where you've taken kind of personal projects that then became a news story, and the images themselves don't really fit the narrative of Mike Kelley, but it fits more of a narrative of what's going on in politics, or in your case, it was something with the LA ports. Yeah, so
I was flying home from Denver or some city in the western U.S., and we came in over the port of Long Beach. And I'm always fascinated by like transportation and shipping and logistics and that sort of thing. So I'm looking out the window, and I'm seeing more cargo ships than I've ever seen in my entire life backed up off the port of Long Beach. And there are trucks. There's a traffic jam like miles long trying to get in the port. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So I landed and I Googled it, and there was like some rumblings of a port strike, but I was like, this is super cool. I got to go take photos of this because this looks like a newsworthy event. I wasn't really even thinking that it was newsworthy. I thought it was just an artistic, interesting thing because, again, I love this big machinery.
All the boats on the horizon.
Oh, my God, it's so cool.
So you rent...
So immediately I call up my helicopter pilot, and I'm like, we need to go right now, photograph this. And again, these photos are cargo ships as far as the eye can see. And I thought they were beautiful, beautiful images. And those images actually kind of broke the story. If you guys remember, there was a port strike, maybe it was like 2 years ago, I think, at this point, in California. And thousands of businesses were being impacted by slowed down delivery of their things from China or their furniture from wherever it may be.
I think we had flash discs involved in that.
The flash discs were involved in that. And in these images, if I may say, they kind of beautifully illustrated this story and kind of broke that news. And those went like very viral. I think that might be one of my more viral photo series, believe it or not, even though it's not on my website and it didn't get me like tons and tons of press like the Airport Route series did. Those were used ad nauseum all over the world to illustrate this breaking event.
And so you were licensing those every time as well.
It wasn't really a human interest story about this crazy guy who hangs out at airports for 12 hours and takes pictures. It was a story or images that were used to illustrate a story that was affecting a lot of people across the entire country.
Very cool. So let's go back a little bit to Wake Turbulence, because
Yeah.
we've all seen those images,
Yeah.
and that's now turned into a much larger project where it's being used much more commercially now because it's such a visual image.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the craziest places that that's been used and how much money you've been able to make kind of on the commercial side of things.
Of course. So there's actually 4 cool things that came out of the entire air portrait series. For those who don't know, I applied that Wake Turbulence concept to images at airports all over the world and trying to capture a day's worth of air traffic. So I've got the licensing for editorial use that we've talked about. I've got all the great human interest pieces about me when magazines want to write about the crazy guy who's flown around the world and hangs out at airports for 12 hours a day. I've got fine art print sales, and I have commercial use licensing as well. So a lot of companies have used those to actually advertise their products, because I didn't even know this when I started the project. There are a lot of companies that make components for every aircraft that you see in those pictures, even Airbus or Boeing or Fokker or whatever it is. And then tourism promoters and travel agencies and stuff like that. So those images have an incredible amount of utility, if you will.
And generally, what are you charging? I know, again, it's a wide spread,
again,
but...
How long is a piece of string? So I've done like the editorial usages all the way from just $75 to $100 for a local small magazine who wants to do a story about it, all the way up to over $15,000, almost $20,000 for commercial usage for advertisements with time periods up to a year. So.
And do you have any idea how much that single project has made you?
Well, it's hard. I'm not like a anally obsessed spreadsheet keeper, but it took me about a month to make. I think I probably spent about $30,000 on that entire project, flying around the world with all the hotels and everything, and maybe 2 or 3 months of my life, not to mention all the time in post. But I think I made back the initial investment in about a month after I released it. And again, I haven't kept a tally, but I'm selling prints almost weekly. I'm making editorial licenses. The thing is still going viral. Not like explosively viral, but it's like a consistent sort of steady output.
Comes in waves.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and then something just happened. I think it was like I forget what it was, a UK magazine, like the Independent or something, did a story about it. And that set off a whole nother wave of virality in Europe. So, and it kind of goes like regionally too. Like the American market will hit it for a couple months, and then it goes to Europe, and then Asia. I remember I was on I believe it's Tokudane. It's one of the largest national television programs in Japan, and they interviewed me via Skype, and it went crazy viral throughout Asia.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going, and it's kind of like...
And it's interesting, too, when we talk viral, because in many cases you think, oh, I got a video that has 100,000 views or something of that nature, and you're thinking it's going viral. But you literally can get to where you have 30 million views, and many people still have not seen it. It has still a chance to go viral even more.
Right.
And so it's always interesting to see these waves kind of come and go.
Of course.
And build up the momentum.
I've had, cousins of my girlfriend who have never met me before. I meet them at a family gathering, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're the guy who took those pictures?" Like, I know those pictures, and it's like there's an instant connection, because they've seen them somewhere. And then there are friends of mine, like on Facebook, who had no idea that I did this. So it's
I've had friends from high school, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw."
That's you, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. So we've talked a little bit about what you should charge for editorial. We've talked about when you should even charge for editorial versus just giving somebody something for free to kind of help your website, your brand, and get the momentum going in the first place. We've talked about a little bit of using these images commercially and what you should charge for that. So there's definitely all of these little compartments and buckets that are charging different things depending on how it's used. Let's talk a little bit about copyright, because what I always find interesting is websites like Reddit, somebody will just steal your photos, put it on Reddit. It seems like a copyright infringement, but then that goes viral, which then leads all of the agencies back to you.
Yeah.
And then whether or not you can even go after them, it's a very convoluted, crazy situation.
Yeah. And
what is your experience with copyright and actually going through the process of sending your images in to have them copyrighted?
Something I need to make very clear is that it's a very fluid thing. There's no black and white. It's almost like rainbow. It's not just gray and black and white. But with the internet and the way that things are constantly evolving, it's so tricky to kind of keep a tab on what is worth pursuing. And I've had, blogs use the picture without kind of asking me, and they'll write a bit about me, and it's gray area. But there are obviously infringement cases that are blatant commercial theft. You know what I mean? And for those cases, I've definitely had to get a lawyer involved, and it's my picture being stolen by tourism agencies or airports or whatever it is, with no regard for my copyright, for even reaching out to me. I've had app developers, I've had newspapers, I've had books, I've had you name it, the picture has been stolen. This kind of reminds me of Noam Galay's Stolen Scream, where so many things get stolen, and a lot of them are in countries that we just have no way to have jurisdiction there. Like, I can't have my lawyer go to Africa and start suing people to recoup funds, you know what I mean? And it does make me glad that we live in a country where we can kind of enforce that, like here in Europe, which is a great, there's great copyright protection.
So I guess,
in place,
do you copyright all of the work that you publish now?
Yeah, so I won't immediately copyright, like I'm doing these commissioned works for my architect clients, and I don't copyright those immediately. I'll usually do like a batch copywriting at the end of every year. But for my personal projects, those all get copyrighted as soon as I release them, just because you never know. And you could get, one infringement, and you will regret so badly that you did not copyright them, because you can actually get much of a higher payout if you have your images copyrighted and then go after the infringer.
And just to be clear to everyone watching this video, your images are technically copyrighted to you. You're the owner of the copyright the second that you take them.
Yep.
But there is a legal distinction of actually uploading them to the Library of Congress and having them...
You need to register with them. You need to register your images with the U.S. Copyright Office to get the full extent of legal protection available to you.
And you can go to their website, like you said, you can batch, talking to other photographers, you can actually make really small thumbnails.
Yeah.
Batch up thousands of images if you want. I know wedding clients that have done this, wedding photographers. They batch all their images just because there's a chance that some image gets out there and it's used on, commercial, used commercially. So you can actually upload everything there, get it copyrighted.
Yep.
And then what does that benefit of having it copyrighted in the U.S. give you?
So that allows you to pursue for statutory damages instead of just actual damages, and the payout for statutory damages are much higher. And there are many, legal services. One that I like is Image Rights. It's actually a service that helps you upload from Lightroom. It's kind of a Lightroom plugin that will upload your images to the Copyright Office and then automatically check for infringements. And every week I get an email that says, you have 5 or 6, infringements that we found, and then you can go and look and say, this is a valid infringement, or this is just some blog in whatever country that you can't really do anything about it, and that's the unfortunate fact. But every week I get an email that says, your images have been posted here. Is this an infringement? If it is, we'll go after it. If not, you can kind of check it off and let it be.
So the statutory infringement damages has a real value on it, and then there is a secondary infringement, which is you've lost money by somebody stealing your images.
Right.
And that number could be anywhere from, I charged $25 to I charged $25,000, but it's kind of a gray area.
Yeah.
But the statutory is it's decreed by the government and says that this is what that value is. It's a more tangible.
I think it's up to like 30,000 or something. But
it may be more than.
Is it a willful infringement, or were they kind of ignorant and didn't know that they were infringing, or are they well aware that, and you have tried to contact them and they ignored you and they continued to use that image? It really depends on the intention of the infringer as well.
I know a friend of mine who he had an image that he shot. I don't remember who it was. It was like LeBron James or maybe Peyton Manning or somebody. Yeah. And it got used in a Super Bowl commercial, and he happened to see it, and he had a conversation with them before, and they declined to pay him. Yeah. And he just thought, they're moving on, and he sees the image in the Super Bowl ad.
Yeah.
And, because he had it all copyrighted and everything, he could go back to him with that $100,000 statutory fine.
I haven't had any settlements in that range yet.
Yeah, but it does happen. So let's talk a little bit then about, you have a series that goes viral and you think, I need to go sue this website because they're using my image.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the organizations and the publications that aren't worth going after versus somebody that really should be paying for the use of that image.
And I will say, I am not a lawyer. So I don't know the...
But you have one.
Yeah, I do. But the specific ins and outs. I mean, and sometimes he'll come back to me and he'll say, look, this is a guy running a blog out of his bedroom. You can go after him, but I don't think it's worth it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I understand. And then you have things like that are clearly commercial violations. Like, for example, we've done app developers, we've done, aircraft manufacturing companies, we've done tourism agencies, we've done airports and everything like that. So I kind of look at it as, are they making a significant profit off this image? Are they driving lots of traffic to their website or in their magazine or their book or whatever they're doing? And again, it's not black and white. It's kind of, you have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. And even if you do go after them, do they have the money to give you? So it's like you can get this thing caught up in court for years and years and years.
And the joke is all the lawyers make money, but like at the end of the day, you don't win the case, or they, they lose the case, but there's nothing to pay out. Would you even say that a blog or a small magazine or something that's using the image and they're getting, Google ads off of it, is that a significant income that you would feel like you should really go after them, or does it decide?
I personally don't know how much money they're making, and my lawyer is far more experienced with this, so I usually just turn it over to him and trust his judgment. And again, with whether it's image rights or the actual lawyer that I've kept on hand, they'll send me a spreadsheet and they'll tell me, do you think this is worth going after? And you can go look in the database like the Who Is or whatever and find out about who's using it and what they're using it for, and if there's really the potential to get money out of it in a court case.
In your case, is your lawyer working to get a commission off of these cases, or are you having to pay him to go after the ones that you think are worth pursuing?
Yeah, it's I have worked on a contingency basis, so if they don't collect, they don't make anything as well. And I think I get like 40% of what they collect. So they've obviously got costs that are a bit higher than mine, because they're the one doing the paperwork, they're the one going to court, they're the one doing all the legwork. So I believe it's like a 60-40 split.
Yeah, I know a lot of photographers, it's either or, and for a lot of them, they say, like, I have to pay my lawyer to go after this, and if it's, if it's a huge company in Sweden, maybe it's worth it, but if it's like you said, a small little blog on Photoshop, it may not be worth paying him at all to try to go after somebody who's never going to,
And again, I try to look at the big picture, like, would there be a significant amount of money at stake here? If some big international company is using my picture and I lost out on thousands of dollars of licensing revenue, then absolutely. But again, if it's just some guy trying to share cool things on his small blog, I'm not really going to bother with it.
So when you knew that you had to start going after these people that were infringing your work, how did you even, I know you're in LA, but so you have, a wide range of people to look for, but how did you know what lawyer to go with, and how did you kind of approach him to manage all of this?
So, of course, I Googled, copyright lawyers, and you will find lots of great results out there. There's people like Carolyn Wright, thephotoattorney.com, I think her website is. There's image rights. Personally, I went to a friend for a recommendation, someone who I knew had experience with enforcing copyright infringement. They were a press photographer in Los Angeles, and they led me to their lawyer. But there are many lawyers out there who specialize in photo infringements, and you can find them with a quick Google search. But again, image rights is a great place to start. Carolyn Wright, who is the photo attorney, I believe, she does a lot of work in this arena also. And she'll say the first thing you need to do before you even contact her is make sure your images are copyrighted. So.
And with this, you're saying you have these wax and wanes of when things go viral. Are you seeing the same sort of thing when they come back to you and say, hey, we've settled with somebody and we have a check for you? Are you constantly making money throughout the entire project, or is it all lumped up to when it was first released?
Well, one interesting thing that I think I should mention is the most infringements that I had were with the original Wake Turbulence image. And that was because, again, I was still learning how to manage my image rights. And they would get out there and they'd be, traded around willy-nilly. But as I got more experience with this and learned how to better manage the rights and the licenses, I actually have noticed that copyright infringement have fallen pretty dramatically, even though I'm putting out a lot more work these days.
And is that because you were just not responding to emails, or you weren't giving people the proper license, or?
I just think I wasn't running a real solid licensing business at that point in time. And now I think people, they look at my website and they understand, oh, this guy's actually, he knows what he's doing. I can probably get a quick answer out of him and know exactly how much I'll pay. And again, I think a lot of it has to come down with the contract language and how you conduct yourself and where you're putting your images, and if it's if they're going up on small blogs all over the place, people will assume. But if it's something big, like it gets on CNN or BBC, I think people are a little bit less likely to steal. I don't know the whole psychology of it, but I will say I have had less infringements once I started really managing my licensing.
It seems like having a lawyer on hand is just a huge nightmare. Is it worth having somebody?
Again, they work on contingency, so I'm not paying anything out of pocket, and they're kind of working autonomously as well. So I don't really hear anything. All I'm doing is selecting the infringements that I think are worth pursuing, and they'll come back to me hopefully a few months or a year later with a settlement. So I haven't made life-changing amounts of money from this. I'd say between like $10,000 and $15,000. Again, I don't keep spreadsheets of it all, but I do get those checks every now and then. It's a nice little surprise, and sometimes those checks are a lot bigger than others. I'm still waiting for that $100,000 infringement you talked about earlier, so hopefully one day that'll come.
Hopefully it'll be on the Super Bowl soon. So now that we've talked a little bit about how much money you can make in the editorial world, commercial world, fine art world, and copyright, and why you might want to go after somebody who's infringing on your work. Why don't we try to break down what we have done to make images as viral as possible? Is there a spreadsheet that you have or bullet points that you follow that you say, if I'm going to go after something that's going to be viral, I should probably implement the things you've learned on the last 4 or 5 shoots you've done?
I would say first and foremost is taking pictures of things or making videos of things, in your case, that have not been seen before. Again, I hate taking pictures that have been done before, so I'm always trying to do new things. I feel like if the picture's already been taken, I don't want to bother taking it. And I think showing people or teaching people things that they didn't know or haven't seen is one way to definite virality. I also think you have to understand how the internet works and how internet publications work, and things like Reddit and Facebook virality and YouTube virality, and understanding that can really go a long way to sort of building those viral connections, if you will, and you know where to put your images and how to title things. And it's like, do you want to do clickbait, or do you want to do moderate clickbait, or do you want to be factual? And I think it all just comes with experience.
You mentioned one thing that I think is key, and that's just producing something that nobody's seen before. And I know as photographers, we like to get wrapped up in the lighting and the depth of field and all these technical things that I think your art buyers and your general public aren't even looking at all. But if you could, what I enjoy doing is coming up mentally with a game plan of like, wouldn't that be interesting to do that?
Right.
And then you do it. And in the case of the Taser photo shoot, I had Vanderbilt's psychology department contacted me, and they were like, you filmed this thing in such slow motion, and we could see the expressions that people were going through, and there's all these micro expressions that we've been studying from a neurological standpoint,
but we've never seen it before.
We've never seen someone go from being fearful to like being ecstatic, or maybe being, you know, apprehensive to being in pain.
It's almost like they expected it to kill them, but they were like so happy it was over.
And so like I've gotten people reaching out to me because they were like, man, you've done something that like, to me it was such a crazy, weird, quirky idea. But to different facets of people, they see different things, and it's something that stops you on your feed as you're scrolling, and you say, I need to watch that.
If you get someone to stop their feed for 5 seconds and just grab them, I think that's the most important thing.
A lot of things I think we've both done that have been really successful is doing series of images. Like obviously your Wake Turbulence was a single image that became a series, but in many cases, I don't know that your trip to Iceland became a viral thing, but it was definitely a big part of your architectural photography, is just taking pictures of the same genre. I know when I did my Guns After Christmas, that was the whole idea. I'm going to go out and I just want to knock out a series in a day and get 50 images.
Well, it seems like you love the human interest sort of stories, you know what I mean? You love people reacting to things, or in should I say humorous situations, depending on whether you
sometimes they have like a little political twist or something in there. I like to push people's buttons without me actually saying anything. I find that pits itself well. I know one of the very first viral things we ever had was the iPhone fashion shoot. And I remember getting on Twitter, and I could type in iPhone fashion, and it was every 5 seconds someone was tweeting it, and it was just growing. And the whole idea behind that was just, let's take the worst camera we possibly have and do a legit photo shoot with it.
And that's something I definitely want to touch on, is like photographers that get caught up in the gear and the equipment, but I don't think the story is really what drives viral content. And if you look on YouTube and you see like potato camera vertical footage going crazy viral, it doesn't have anything to do with the 6D Mark whatever that they shot it on. It was shot on. And again, I feel like, and something that drives me crazy, is the original Wake Turbulence was done with a Canon 6D and a 50mm 1.8 lens. It's like the cheapest lens that Canon makes, and that thing is just blown up all over the world. And it's all about, you know, the story, not the equipment, but the people involved, or capturing something that hasn't been seen before, even if it's on some crappy piece of equipment.
Another thing I think a lot of photographers can do that I've found very successful, I don't know how much of this you've done, is just add a video element to the photos that they're doing. And in terms of the stun gun shoot, I think it was because of the video. The images are interesting, but I know, you know, Comedy Central wouldn't have just run the images without that video.
Well, with the video, you get the whole range, like the psychology professor said, you get this range of emotions. I mean, a camera can absolutely capture that, but the video shows it.
But without the video, the photos aren't as powerful. But then without the photos, it's harder to embed the content in a video format.
And I feel like the video shows the, you know, the the human element, like the build up and the tension and the release of that tension, rather than just a photo which just captures that one decisive moment.
Right.
And
then
builds anticipation.
Another thing that I did as a kind of different angle with the Guns After Christmas is I kind of wrote the narrative.
Yeah.
I interviewed myself and told the story of what this shoot is, almost as if it was a news story.
Yeah.
And that allowed everyone to just latch onto it and say, that's the story. We want to tell it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I pretty much spoon-fed the audience this narrative. It's like, here's the story, here's how I executed it, here's how it was pulled off.
Yeah.
And then that allowed other news agencies to kind of come up with their own angle and then still use my pictures in that capacity. So I find that video, especially in today's world, I mean, that's what everyone's watching on Facebook.
You were on national news for the rifle photo shoot, right? Or was it the stun gun one, or was it both?
I had picked it up. I was on CNN for one and Fox News for the other.
And do you think, did people identify with the, obviously I don't think most people identified with the stun gun one, but with the rifle one, did that turn into like a big political?
Oh, absolutely. It was like Europe and the more left side of our country were like horrified with it. And then the right side, the conservative side,
that's amazing.
They were like, NRA, guns rights things. And so I find it interesting to not really pick a side, but to allow both sides to use it in different ways.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really interesting to see the worldwide response.
And again, I totally think that series teaches people something. It's like, I had no idea people would get guns for Christmas and go out with a 50 cal.
And the type of people, there's all walks of life. I mean, children, old people, every color, like every demographic.
Right.
So I find that really interesting because I kind of go into it with this simple seed of an idea, and then it sprouts into something that even I wasn't, anticipating. So I find that, to me, that's why I like these photo series, is because you get to go in and do something as silly as using a stun gun on somebody, and then that opens up this whole other world. And I always like tinkering in my mind these ideas of what's the next one, And I don't want to be known as the guy with guns and stun guns.
Yeah.
But you could do something with, with animals, dogs. And I remember a guy who shot horses from below.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what a cool idea. He got all these horses to stand on this thick plexi and, again, shot something that nobody had seen before.
And they probably teach something new. It's like, I had no idea that the horse looked like that from below. So, I'm really interested now because I only do still images. How do you manage licensing and distributing these viral videos that you've done? Is that something that, you can, there's like a database of what to charge, or do they come to you and CBS comes to you and says, we'll give you $1,500 or $2,000 to run this on our segment here? How does that work?
Yeah, so I've only had a handful of these, so I still am by no means an expert. But with video, it's really tricky because everyone wants that video on their own player.
Yeah.
And the idea is if we put it on our own player, we can then get the advertising revenue from the advertisers that we have on our channel.
Yeah.
And so everything kind of starts off with YouTube, and a lot of people don't know this, but YouTube pays generally $1,000 in ad revenue per million views that you get. So you can go look at the taser shoot right now, and there was 2 or 3 videos packaged together, and I think in total they have around 7 to 8 million views. So we made a whopping $8,000. So, unless you're getting hundreds of millions of views on some channel, you're really not making that much money. But if you can license it out for, national TV, you can get a chunk of change.
You need to combine the Chewbacca doll with the stun gun thing and then make it.
Yeah. So I think, I definitely know for certain I've made $8,000 on YouTube revenue.
Yeah.
But then I did something that I don't know that you've done is for the first video, I licensed it out to a management company. And so the idea there is that they're going to take all the revenue and divert it to their channel or their management group. But then they're going to be able to take that raw video and now approach companies that maybe I'm not able to approach or that I don't have the time to approach. And then that gets it on, the video players that you see on CNN or Fox News or Huffington Post. Those are all proprietary video players, and they can now inject your content into them, and you will receive, in theory, a much larger payback than if you just had the Google ads playing on YouTube. So I don't know, like you said, I don't know that I have a strict number of what I've made. I know that it cost me about $1,000 to do that shoot. I basically bought a bunch of beer and rented out a bar, bought a bunch of tasers. The whole production was $1,000 at most, and I definitely made probably $8,000 to $10,000 just on the video ad revenue.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, I had the editorial stuff where I was making $200, $500 per article.
Yeah.
And then I think you mentioned this too, I started getting, commercial work where I had some car companies that didn't use they used the stun gun images, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But they didn't use them in a public arena, but they used it internally in their corporate flyers and their reports and stuff. So, I think I made $2,000 or $3,000 on a single image from the taser shoot that was used for a car company.
Yeah.
That when I saw the final, layout, you wouldn't have known it was the taser shoot at all.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. So, video is a little different. I think you can make a lot more money if it gets on national television.
Yeah.
Than the still side of it.
Well, not even. I'm sure you probably got tons and tons of backlinks and exposure, and your status as a photographer or videographer grew. But then people say, "Oh, he's that stun gun guy,"
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I even had wedding clients who were like, "Oh my gosh, we found out you were the stun gun guy, and we hired you because of that, or we hired you, and then now we know." And so I've had people ask me to do stun gun shoots at their wedding, and I'm like, I got to draw the line somewhere.
Stun gun photo
So
booth.
I do think it's important to remind people that you can do things that are viral, but the end goal isn't always to be viral. At least in my case, I don't want to be known as the stun gun shoot guy. I want to do a bunch of other things. And so my ultimate goal is kind of probably what yours is to do 5 to 10 of these to where you have this body of work that people say, I've seen that.
Yeah.
But you're not pigeonholed into any one of them. And then that gives you a larger platform to do even more creative things.
Yeah.
In your case, you're able to kind of sell yourself more as a fine art photographer and make money in this world that I think a lot of photographers aren't even aware of. Yeah. So the goal shouldn't be to just go viral. If that's your plan, that's probably not as hard to do as you would think.
Yeah,
and there's not a big enough reward to just say, oh my gosh, everyone saw my images, now
right.
what?
But it's about like a career-long thing. It's
right.
like laying a path and saying, here's my goal. I'd like to get into the art world, or I'd like to license more images, or I'd like to shoot more of XYZ subject. And you're going to start to do very interesting things in those fields to kind of grow that business, rather than just, I'm going to make a viral photo series of cats or bears or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And because just a viral photo of a non-artistic, non-newsworthy subject won't do much for your career or for your bank balance. So.
Yeah, and I think you really have to do something that you're passionate about. Like, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about
Tasing
guns
people.
or anything like that, but I enjoy taking interesting portraits of people.
Yeah.
I've seen all of these portrait series over the last 100 years and, the Appalachian series and stuff like that, where you just look at it and you're like, these pictures are so weird and quirky, but it captures a moment in American history or, wherever you're at. And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah.
So you have to have a passion for what you're doing. You can't just go out there. I think you would drive yourself crazy just going out there trying to make viral content all the
Right.
time. There are definitely successful, channels and avenues that do that. But at some point, it becomes, it's like sugary cereal, and you're just like tired of it after
Yeah.
a week of it. So
Right.
I think you really need to be passionate about what you do and have something to say, have a unique angle, and really think it over, as you're developing it.
Yeah.
Unless you're flying over the port and you say, I got to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, I got to do it tomorrow. Boom.
I hope this video is really helpful for a lot of people that are either wanting to make their pictures go viral, or they're inevitably probably going to be faced with a point when something they create does go viral. I know for me, I have so much work going on that when I take the time out to do a personal project, I kind of go into it wanting to make it viral, or
Yeah.
to play with some kind of, controversial topic or interesting perspective, and do it all out in the efforts that it gets picked up and it
Yeah.
becomes something, just because I don't have time to do too many personal projects that don't have that kind of element to it.
Yeah.
And I assume now that you've had a lot of projects go viral yourself,
Yeah.
it's always going in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, for me, it's showing people something that I'm in love with, and if I can do that in a way that, does well for my business and promotes me at the same time, that makes me so happy. Because, I am in this as a business. I do love creating art and sharing, what I love with people, but at the same time, you got to support yourself and make money. So I would say, would I love all my projects to go viral? Of course. Am I trying to get them to go viral? Maybe not necessarily viral, but I try to get as many eyeballs as I can. And it makes me really, really happy when I can share something like the airplane shots or the LA airspace images. Share something I love with people who I identify with that and will enjoy it as well.
And I think what's so cool for people out there watching to know is so many amazing doors have been opened for both of us. I mean,
Yeah.
we've gotten featured. I've been featured on shows that I watched as a teenager that I was like, I can't believe I'm, I'm on, Comedy Central for something I did. And in your case,
Right.
it's really opened up this whole aviation
Yeah.
field for you. I mean,
Right.
you're doing so many cool things and
Yeah.
something that was a hobby of yours that maybe now you're making as much money or a significant amount of money shooting, you know, aerial aviation stuff.
As I am with architecture, so.
Right, and that never would have happened if you didn't take the time to put that out there
Exactly.
and to really do it. So I think, you know, if you're a struggling photographer who's just shooting one genre of photography, you know, you've heard this by so many other photographers. The number one thing that you can really do is do personal projects.
Yeah.
And if you're going to invest the time and money to do it, come up with something really cool and creative
unique,
and something
yeah.
that you would love to shoot full time.
Yeah.
Because you never know, it might become viral, and next thing you know, you have airports around the world calling you up and saying, "Hey, get out here."
Yes.